India's transition to clean energy in focus as the flagship energy conference, India Energy Week, continues in Goa. But analysts and industry insiders say there's a great deal of work ahead to put in place the finance and infrastructure so India can stay on track on its plans. And Rebecca Bundhun is covering developments for CNA Live from Goa. Rebecca, of course, every country facing the challenge of looking for energy independence while making sure there is no compromise on economic growth. More than 120 countries sending delegates to this Energy Week. What have you been hearing from delegates at this event?
Yes, that's right. And there's been a lot of talk about the growth in energy demand. OPEC today was saying that by 2050, there's going to be 23% in terms of the growth in energy demand. And it says that we don't see any signs of demand for oil peaking anytime soon. And that's really been a lot, that also reflects a lot about what people here are saying at the conference, that India's oil minister said that renewables are not going to replace oil and gas, at least for now or in the foreseeable future. It's really just an addition on top of that. So, you know, there's been a lot of focus on the alternatives like nuclear, biofuels, various forms of renewable energy, even green hydrogen. But they are still not enough. It's about India really keeping up with the demand. As that demand grows amid factors including urbanization, a rising population, that demand is just growing. But at the same time, India does need to look at its decarbonisation efforts, and it is doing that. It is very, very focused and committed to boosting renewables, looking at other alternative forms of energy. But the reality is that it can't move away from oil and gas any time soon. And there are also when it comes to renewables, to solar and wind power development. Although it's putting a lot of capacity in place, there's also the need to put that infrastructure that goes with it in place to make sure that that energy can be stored, that it gets to people. So that's the transmission and distribution infrastructure. And I spoke to people here about that earlier. Let's have a look at a report I filed on this topic. The winds of change are blowing for India's energy sector. Renewables are central to its strategy to meet the rising needs of an expanding economy. But while India is making strides in its capacity development, there are hurdles to be addressed, including having sufficient infrastructure to distribute the clean energy it generates.
Of course, the transmission and distribution infrastructure really has required a lot of investment, I think, over the next 15 years. We think around $400 billion cumulatively over that period to support the build-out of power infrastructure, because it's not really that useful to have the capacity generating if it's not delivering power to where it needs to go.
You have to make the grid reliable. So you need like battery storage, which is quite expensive. So there are a lot of pump storage, which basically takes the solar energy, wind energy, puts that in energy reservoir, and then feeds the grid.
India is largely dependent on fossil fuel imports, and the country is looking to clean energy to help bring down those costs and reduce its carbon footprint. The government is aiming to almost double India's non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. Green hydrogen is one still nascent clean fuel that's being showcased here at the India Energy Week conference in Goa. This bus is an example of how the fuel could be used as part of India's clean energy transition. The green hydrogen it runs on is produced by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity generated from renewable sources. But this option is still relatively expensive to produce at just under $4 a kilogram.
My sense is that if we can bring it down to below 3, it comes to 2.5. Since we spend $150 billion of money on imports of energy, there will be a public policy pressure saying to shift to green hydrogen.
As India looks for ways to bring down its oil and gas import bill, other clean forms of energy, including biofuels and nuclear, are also taking centre stage at events like this.
So
we can see that India's working really hard on these alternatives, but none of them are perfect solutions. Nuclear obviously comes with those safety issues. Renewables, India's having challenges in terms of putting the infrastructure in place. Green hydrogen, there's the expense of it, also the difficulty with transporting that kind of fuel. So these are all things that can help, and India's making this big push towards renewables, but it's still got to work on other ways and work harder on these to make sure that it can bring that energy import bill down.
Our thanks to Rebecca Bundhun reporting live for CNA on India Energy Week from Goa.